and you have to be connected to your heart, because your heart is where your truth is. Your brain, your mind is all about programming. So we have to teach our mind to become obedient to our heart.
I got $1 billion mindset, steady as the flow, navigating on my time spent, letting niggas know. $1 billion.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Into the Mind. I'm your host, Marlon Johnson. I'm beyond grateful to have you listening. If it's your first time tuning in, I'm really excited for this episode because we're going to be sitting down with Tanya Oliver, and she's somebody that I was extremely fortunate enough to meet actually about a year ago. So it's right now October of 2022. We met back in 2021 at the TAB retreat in Cancun, Mexico, a phenomenal experience. I actually remember we were sitting in a small circle with Tim Story, a very intimate circle. I think it was about 8 of us in there. And she and I were just going back and forth with Tim, asking him some amazing questions. And I just remembered thinking, wow, this woman had so much depth to her, and she wants to help so many people, and she continues to work on herself, not so she can just fulfill herself, but so she can go out and truly serve others at the highest level. Throughout that time, I've watched her go out and serve entrepreneurs at their highest level, taking them from being broken and busted and putting them back in together so that they can run 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses. And now she's constantly getting on social media, sharing her authentic self, getting on stages, sharing her authentic self. And she's going to be here today with you all to share her story as I ask her a little bit more about her origin story. We dive into the importance of health, heart, and peace. And we might get a little deep. Like with her, we like to have some pretty deep conversations. Every time we bump into each other at events or masterminds, we always start going a little bit down that rabbit hole. So if we go down the rabbit hole today and you get a little bit lost, it's okay. You can pause, you can go back a little bit. We'll try our best to define, but it's going to be a great conversation today. So tune in. But Tanya, welcome to the podcast. Welcome Into the Mind.
Thank you so much for having me. We've been trying to make this happen for a while, but the time is now. Very excited.
It's been nuts, with rescheduling, and that's just the life of entrepreneurs. It's the life of individuals that are on a mission. We live life on purpose. So Tanya, what I want to know from you, if you're okay with it, is I want to go actually a little bit to your origin story, because when I met you, you were already pretty established and you were continuing to establish yourself more within the space of coaching and working with high level entrepreneurs. However, I don't actually know your origin story of what even got you interested into the work that you do with mindset, because you help so many people. I mean, I love your content on social media, and you're constantly serving so many people through your IG lives of minding my business. So catch me up to speed and tell me, how did you get into this work with mindset?
Oh man, thank you. Gosh, I always say I have so many past lives in this lifeline. So I feel like God put me through so many different segments in my life so that I can really understand people. I believe that we're put in certain situations and circumstances in order to understand and to have compassion and grace for others. And we only know unless we've had an experience. And so my upbringing was actually pretty amazing. We grew up with money. My dad was self-made, and he ran away from home at 16. He left a very domestic violent family, and drugs and alcohol is let me just share real fast. Addiction is like a lineage in my bloodline. I think it's kind of that for most people, but definitely mine. And so my dad had left home at 16, built a very successful construction business. And we grew up, we had Hummers in the driveway. We had Cadillacs. We went to private schools. I played ice hockey. So I was an athlete. I fell in love with sports. And I think that's where I established my foundation of discipline and work ethic. And I was very focused. So I didn't really get into the partying, because I always had practice or at a game. And I always wanted to take myself to another level each year. I wanted to become like the best of the best in ice hockey. There wasn't much for women to go. So I wanted to take it as far as I could. And then I would like always try to, I have twin brothers. So I'd always play on their, on their team whenever I could practice. I'd always ask the coaches if I could practice with the guys so I could put myself in a very uncomfortable position for more growth. And I always loved being like the weakest player because it pushed me to then have a new direction of growth. So I would put myself in uncomfortable levels. So it pushed me and challenged me to grow. So eventually I could become the best of that. And so I feel like sports was such a healthy outlet for me. It was a great way for me to manage my anger. I had a lot of anger, and now I understand like why, like doing all this work to understand like my personality trait. But we grew up with that. And so at the age of when I went away to college, because I had a scholarship for hockey, I did take it to a very elite level. And my dad had to get major back surgery, and he had fell and he had to get a spine surgery. They cut him from the front and the back, and they just literally did a lot of malpractice. And because he was in so much pain, he ended up getting addicted to the medication and the drugs. And then it kind of went down a rabbit hole. So we lost everything. So we grew up with everything. So a lot of entrepreneurs, I can understand. So I was so passionate with the entrepreneurial world, but then they neglect themselves. And then eventually they do get into a space of addiction or certain ways of handling, their pain. And so we lost everything. So I had like both extremes. Not only did I lose, we lost the lavish lifestyle and never having to work for anything and just kind of like had no stress about money, to then be like, I don't know how to pay for gas. I don't know how to pay for groceries. I have to figure out how to like get a job that's going to support me. And then I had to establish a whole nother hustle side of me in my 20s. So that's like like a fast forward back end story of the foundation of kind of like my upbringing. Like it was great. Like we had an amazing childhood. We had never worried about anything. It was just really cool experience growing up.
Yeah, that is really interesting. That's really cool. First off, thank you for sharing that. Like it makes a lot of sense that you were an athlete, right? Because there's so much that you learn, so many life lessons that you pick up when you're in sport, when you're in a place where the competition, you were purposefully putting yourself around players that were better than you so that you would level up. I mean, like, I really think people sleep on that when, we look at some of the best performers in the world, you find that they have this like athletic bone in them. There's just a certain hunger. So although your lifestyle was well taken care of, which, I think a lot of people are almost like afraid to admit when they do come from anything that is like a stable or like a foundation of money. I've seen my friends like not want to admit things like that, and I'm like, guys, there's nothing wrong with where you came from. If you came from the gutters or if you had things nice and handed to you, at some point we all end up having to take care of ourselves, which it sounds like when your father got his back surgery, you were kind of thrown into the ocean at that point at a later time in your life where now it's really sink or swim. So I'm curious when that transition happened, because that's a pretty major shift, like coming from a lifestyle.
Sure. Yeah. Because it's not regardless of the lifestyle, like the whole family dynamic was broken. I mean, I'm not going to say that it wasn't broken when there was money involved, because there was a lot of like, a lot of wealthy homes. It doesn't depend if money and no money, like there's money doesn't resolve the dynamic of an intimate relationship. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, okay, the money's gone. I lost my family. I lost my dad. I lost my relationship with everything. And now I have to learn how to fend for my own. And so the point of entrepreneurship really is a sport in its own. Like it really truly is a sport, and you decide like what sport you're going to play. So we're all athletes, and I would say like we're all athletes, and life and the career that we choose is our sport. And then what level do you want to take that career? Do you want to just play, or do you want to play to win? Do you want to take it to the championship? Do you want to be the MVP or MVP player in that championship like game? So I do feel entrepreneurship is a sport. And so if you take the same principles and characteristics and traits and you just transition them into the career space, it can totally be like a game, like a sport, and you same thing, put yourself in levels where you like feel like you suck and everybody's like way better than you. And then eventually you get to play at their level too.
I love that. So let me ask you this, right? When we're, especially with the sport analogy, when we're playing sports, the purpose, the goal is to go and get points on the board, right?
Mhm.
When you are going into entrepreneurship, sometimes the purpose is to go and make money. When you were at the place where the lifestyle shifted, right? The luxury was turned off and you had to go fend for yourself. What was it that you in your mind were thinking you need to go and do now? Where did your mind go to in that moment?
Well, my first career was strength and conditioning. So I guess that makes sense too, because everybody's like, oh, I see you work out. I was like, yes, it is foundation. You have to have a solid foundation. You have to prioritize your self-care and how you take care of your body, because your body is your vehicle for your mind. And I'm a very big visionary. You are too. Like that's, I think, where we have a lot of respect for each other and even the colleagues that we surround ourselves with, because there's a vision, there's a purpose. And in order to be able to have the endurance and keep up with our vision, we have to be able to take care of our body to get us through, to get us to like traveling and events and, being punctual and being mentally sharp and being able to course correct and transition and have intellectual conversations. Like that's all about the mind, but without a healthy body, the mind can't operate at peak performance. And so my first career was a strength and conditioning. I was a strength and conditioning coach, and I just loved serving and supporting people. And it was a very healthy environment. One thing I always promised myself, because of seeing my dad, was that I would always choose a career that was healthy for me. A lot of times we choose careers and we're just looking at it because of like the money. And I do believe like my father really, really loved construction. I really do believe, but there was a point where he didn't have to do certain things anymore and he just did it. And I think because entrepreneurs don't move, like when you live in a certain, let's say, survival mode for a long period of time, and you don't have to be in that energetic space anymore. A lot of entrepreneurs never transition to a thriving mode where they start to delegate and they take themselves out of the certain roles that they don't need to be in anymore. And so I feel like as far as like the mental health, the emotional health, the physical health, the spiritual health, that we do have to remove ourselves. It's like saying like, okay, you graduated kindergarten and now you're going to first grade, or you graduated elementary school and now it's time to go to middle school. Like, why would you still be studying elementary stuff when it's time to go to middle school? Why would you still be studying middle school stuff when it's time to go to high school? You're not going to be hanging out with those crowds. You have to up level yourself.
So I like that because, it sounds like when you were watching your father go through what he was going through, especially as he battled with his health, and you now had to step into your own, you prioritized the health, right? Which like, I think is really cool because here's what's interesting. You came from a place of already having the money, right? I think most people in their entrepreneurial journey are in sight of the money. Like that's the first prize that they want to get to. And you came from a place of having already experienced that trophy to know that entrepreneurship provides much more. The ability to go out and live your life on your own terms provides much more. Yes, there will be money involved if that's what you seek. However, you saw there is more, right? Being able to prioritize the health and build that into it. So you started going down this route of doing the coaching and the strength training. And you started to also, at what point did you start to really transition from just working on the physical side to also the mental side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say I want to rewind just a little bit because I feel like a lot of people don't give credit enough to quitting. Before I found my sport, my mom was a really big, my parents were both very supportive on us having freedom to choose and to try and to quit and then to try something else as long as we tried something else. And so I will say, like, I think a big part too of my foundation is like my parents allowing me to try different sports and then quit until I found one that I was really passionate about. And so I think we also need to give ourselves credit where, like, keep trying different paths until you find a path where you're passionate about. Cause sometimes you're like one path short of the path that's going to be a big part of the level of fulfillment in your heart and in your life. And I just wanted to add that because it came to my mind. And I think it's an important message to tell people, to give yourself permission to quit until you find something that does fulfill you. And then when you find it, of course, like, commit. Like, don't keep quitting.
Well, you know
But
what? I do want to echo that for a moment, because that, Tanya, is something that I personally struggled with for a good long while, where even, as you and I met, you met me during a stage where I was doing a lot more wholesale and real estate, and that's what I was chasing after. However, what I found and what I always knew was I was deeply passionate about coaching, about the work on mindset, about creating podcasts, creating this kind of content that has ultimately changed my life in such a drastic way. However, I was a little too afraid to pursue that real passion. And it took being surrounded by people who gave me permission to pursue my personal passion. Like, I had to give myself permission ultimately. However, it helped hearing it from others. So that's why I want to echo what you're saying right now, because for me, it was such a drastic thing when individuals gave me permission to be myself.
mhm.
So
Yeah, it's important because people think, oh, well, I'm here and I'm being lazy. And then we get like this, it's a confliction of the mind, the duality of the mind, where the mind just battles each other. Cause you hear some people like, don't quit, keep going. Well, if it doesn't fulfill you, if it doesn't fulfill your heart, there's multiple, I see there's multiple paths to an end destination. You don't, there's a difference between self-discipline and self-punishment. So we want to make sure we take a path that it does create fulfillment. It makes us happy, but don't like get this confused. Like, it's a lot of work. It's hard work. It is showing up in days where you don't feel like it. Like, that's where the commitment and the discipline comes in place, but it's never a punishment. There's always a reward behind it.
right. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because you have been able to have the pleasure of diving into the lives of individuals. We don't have to go into exactly who those individuals are, but I know some of the people that you've worked with, and you've been able to meet them at places where on the outside they are the most successful they have ever been. But when you met with them internally, they were broken. And it would be later that they would come out in public and say it, but you were working with them before they presented that in public and let the rest of the world know what was going on. So
Yeah.
what was it that you were finding when you were working with some of these individuals that had achieved that outward success?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing is I want to emphasize even the word broken. Like, nobody's ever broken. We're just disconnected. And
Mm.
this also comes back, like, where they're connected or disconnected. And something that I always set with the first session I actually do with anybody, it's we reset a new internal GPS. And just like a GPS in the phone, once it's there, it's like going to take us there. There might be detours, there might be blocks, but eventually it's always going to take us to that GPS. And a lot of times we have targets and we have goals that just no longer serve the new season of our life. And so it creates a disconnect, and so I don't feel like anybody's broken. I'm just a guide. I have really amazing tools. I have really cool power tools, and I just teach people how to use them so they're self-sufficient. And whenever they feel disconnected, they feel like things aren't serving them, they pull their tools and they get back on course. Like I said, there's multiple paths to an end destination. And a lot of times people just are on the wrong path for their next level upgrade.
I I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I like what you said, right? That people aren't broken.
Yeah,
It's
we're
either
not.
connected or disconnected. I sat down, if you're familiar with David Meltzer, I had him come on this podcast, and he had written a book that said Connected to Goodness. And
Mm,
he said to me, he said, listen, do you look at the title. Read my title one more time. I said it's connected to goodness. He said, yeah, connected. As in, you're already connected, and it's not connecting to goodness. It's not finding the goodness. You're already connected. I just need to remind you. We just need to clear some of the clutter, but the door is already in your house. You just got some stuff piled up in front of the door is all.
Yeah. And it's very simple. I want to like emphasize this. Like, it's pretty simple. I always explain it like this. I'm really big. Like, I try to take all of the work that I do, because it does get really heavy, and make it almost like a game. Like, this is the sport of life. And most people, what I've realized, and I only know this because, I didn't mention this, but I even had to heal from addiction myself. Like, when everything happened in my 20s, I got into addiction, and it took like at least a decade to heal from it and to reconnect with myself. And it was just a tool. Substance abuse is a tool we use to help us get through either physical pain or emotional pain. And we all, at the end of the day, as human beings, crave relief to help us get through the pain and the discomfort. And the only thing is, like I said, I have really amazing tools that are healthy tools, and they just help people get through that without having to harm themselves or harm others. And the biggest thing when I'm talking about disconnect is, a lot of times our mind is our biggest critic, and it's actually our enemy and not our friend. And so we learn how to befriend the mind. We learn how to get our mind on our own team. We learn how to get our body on our own team. We learn how to get our emotions on our own team, and we learn how to connect back to our spirit. And so it's like the mind, body, spirit, and we learn to just bring and encompass all of that together, where we feel whole, we feel secure, we feel safe, and we feel like, yeah, I'm on my own team. I have my own back. A lot of times we don't even have our own back. And so we become a liability to ourselves and to others and to our companies, versus an asset.
I agree. So Tanya, I want to go there for a second. I want to go back where, you're in your 20s, you start to find your path, you start to find the career within sports and strength training, and you're obviously, it's a darker time, right? Take me to that version of you. What eventually led to the struggling with the addiction? Like, how did that pathway begin to uncover itself for you?
Well, the biggest thing was, like, I felt numb. I felt depressed. I had a lot of anxiety. I was suicidal. I didn't want to be here anymore. I just was so miserable, and everything that I was doing that was like commonly accepted, like drinking and smoking and eating a bunch of junk food. I had gained 60 pounds, and I was like, would always tear at my skin. I was a compulsive skin picker, and that's another addiction on its own. And I was just constantly rejecting myself in every single way possible. And I was like, okay, listen, there's 2 points in my life where I didn't want to be here anymore. And one was, I believe I was like 20, 21, something like that. And then the other was actually a year and a half ago. So, like I said, there's been so many intense moments in life where I'm like, you know what, if I'm gonna be okay with dying, then what if I actually learned to live and lived on purpose and really like lived vivaciously? Like, that's my new favorite word. I was studying, I was like, okay, I'm writing a book right now, and it's called Building the New. And I was writing like about like being in your full potential. And I'm like, something doesn't resonate about this word full potential. It's like there's still a gap. It's like I'm not there, but there's a possibility of there. And I was like, and I'm not okay with that. Like, I want to bring that there to me now. And I was like, what is that word? It's driving me crazy. So I meditated on it, and then it came to me, and I spent like an hour and a half on Google. And the word is vivacious, and it's like living it. And it's like, I kind of like want to dance when I say it, because it's like life, it's like life. We're living, we're being, we're doing, like we are it. Like, be here now, do it now. And there is no waiting. There is no time gap. There is no like in between space. It is now. I'm here. I am now. I'm being it. I'm doing it. I'm, and so I am it. I am her and you are him. And so yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, I don't know, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole. We told you guys we were going down rabbit holes.
I love it. Well, I mean,
Avenues.
well, Tanya, what you did, like what I love is like, first off, I hope the audience can hear like the energy, like the smile on your face to the people that are just listening. And as you said, vivaciously, I was just like, ooh, I love that word.
Right?
And
Isn't it an amazing word?
it's such a good word. And what's really cool is, what's interesting is you said like in the beginning, before you chose to live vivaciously, you were doing typical coping mechanisms, right? Drinking, eating. And what you said was it was commonly accepted behavior, which I thought was so interesting, because I'm curious to know at that point in your life, what was the crowd that you were spending your time with? And the reason I asked that question is because, Tanya, I found myself talking to a gentleman the other day, and he had reached out for help. And unfortunately, when he reached out, or not unfortunately, but just what happened as he reached out, I told him, hey, this is what we can do and things of that nature. And then he just went into a total self-defeating moment. And I said, listen, is it okay if I speak truthfully to you? And I said, I'm going to make an assumption about you because I don't know you well enough yet, but I'm going to make an assumption that right now you're living in isolation because maybe you came from a negative crowd, but you haven't found a crowd to plug into yet. So I'm curious, when you noticed that this was commonly accepted behavior, what was the crowd like that you were spending your time with during those early 20s?
Yeah, I mean, I was in college. I was like finishing up college, and because I had transferred, I had a scholarship up in Syracuse, and then I had transferred to Tampa, so USF, and I was in a sorority. And so it was a party girls, it's a this and that. And then, but I still did separate myself because I always knew I was different. I always knew there was more. There was just always knew I never really fit in, but I could always be like a chameleon in every group. But I never had a group. I never felt like I had a group, a community.
A quick question. I want to say something with you noticing that you always stood out. Like, when did you start to notice? Was that like from an early age?
Yeah, from a very early age. And even in high school, like the only place I felt home was when I played sports. Like when I played ice hockey, that's where I really felt I felt like a belonging. And so I think when we take little pieces of our belonging, what I've realized is most people that choose to participate, because I do feel that in order to lead, we first have to learn how to lead ourselves. And I do believe it was a journey of me finally taking ownership of my life and taking personal responsibility, getting on my own team, becoming an asset to myself, and then creating a community of which I wish I would have had. And so I do believe leadership, in order to truly lead, we first have to, number one, get on a lane. And sometimes you're going to be in that lane on your own for a while.
That's powerful. So even in college, so high school and like younger years, you were feeling separate, you were feeling different, you knew something was up. And then as you got into young adulthood, you were still aware of that, although you joined what would be most traditionally seen as kind of like conforming, right? Joining the sorority, it's like when we joined the fraternities and we joined the sororities where we're going to blend in. However, even in a place where you're blending in, you felt like you stood out.
Yeah, I always felt like, well, one thing is when I transitioned, when I was in college, I played on a sport. So I played ice hockey. So I had a group. I always had like a micro group to like a larger, group. And then once I moved, I decided I wasn't going to play anymore. And the only thing that I saw as far as community based was sorority, because they didn't have ice hockey. I was retired that sport at that and in that season of my life. And so I knew that I at least I always knew like I needed to join something. And I do give that also credit to my parents, where they always like had us involved. They had us active, whether it being like art, or they had us in sports, or they always just had us doing something. I think it's really important for people, if you don't have something, find a community to join. And then you can always quit the community. Nothing is forever, but at least give yourself permission, as you said, like give yourself permission to try something and to see if that resonates with you. And it's not forever. It could be just a season. It could be a month. It could be 3 months. And even to this day, when I work with people, like I'm part of the yoga community, I'm part of the salsa community. I salsa dance, I do yoga, and those are communities. You know, when I do entrepreneur, when I go to events, like those are communities, mastermind groups. And so it does give you more of a direction of it doesn't mean you have to stay there or choose the one and only, but at least it's something, and it is a community with common interests. But just make sure that those interests are adding value and they align with your core values. And you might be uncomfortable because you might not feel like you belong in there, and that's okay, especially if you're in a season of becoming.
Right. So you were a part of the sorority community, and you were seeing that essentially it was no longer, it sounds like, I'm assuming here that at some point you realized it wasn't adding value to you anymore, just based off of the direction your life was going. So how did you did you pull yourself out of it, or like what
Well, I
happened
mean,
from there?
I graduated, and then I graduated, I moved, I was in a transitional space, so they didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually got fired from my first job. I was there for like 9 months, and I'm sorry, like 3 months, and then I got fired. I was whatever, it was stupid. I really do believe in that quote where they say like rejection is God's redirection.
Oh
I
yeah.
do I like keep that to my heart like every day, because I get rejected even to this day all the time. Like all the time. I'll reach out to people, rejection, but it's just redirection. It's like, no, that's not the path. Like keep going. You know, you can't get so devastated or caught up about it, because it's just a course correct, you know? And so when I graduated, I went back to vocational school, because for strength and conditioning, it's more vocational school. And I found a new community, and it was like health and wellness and strength and conditioning, but people still do, even the entrepreneurial space, they go out, they go party, they drink. And even to this day, I'm still like a little weird. You know, everybody's like weird because weird is just different. You know, you live a different lifestyle, and people can't understand how that actually is a lifestyle. Like for me, I'm in a season, and I don't think I'm ever going to go backwards, where I just don't have time for anything or anyone that's going to slow me down. And alcohol for sure, like slows my mind. It disconnects me from my higher self, from operating at higher levels. And as a visionary, I just don't feel like that's living on purpose. So even to this day, I'm very selective where I position myself, and creating my own lane. You know, I've got a team, I've got building a community. And so we'll attract our own people.
I absolutely love that. And actually, like I wrote it down here, rejection is God's redirection, because that's so true and so powerful. I know in my own personal journey, I mean, the amount of times I've faced rejection, it's just like I've learned to appreciate it. I've learned to
Yeah.
understand that, wow, when this happens, I think this was meant to be, because it aligns you up to where you say you actually want to go. So you're now in a place where you're building that community that you yourself always wanted, because
Yeah.
inside these other communities, you felt like an outsider. And like, let's talk about that journey for a second of building your own community, because that's something that some people, they're going to look at you, Tanya, and they're going to go to your social media. They're going to see how amazing you are. Especially, by the way, when you had your red hair, it was just like, like I loved it. I love the look right now. And like every
Thank
time
you.
you change your look, I just like, I love it,
Yeah.
and
I did that post because everybody's like, don't change it. It's your brand. And I'm like, I am my brand, you know?
facts, big facts. And what I love is you're bold, right? And you're powerful. And I think sometimes when people see that, they're just like, wow, like good for her, but I could never do that. And what I love about you is you actually reached, I think maybe it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I saw you make a post where you were actually in your car and you were sharing, it was a past memory of you were going through it, full
Yeah.
tears, and you were just really showing this arc, this story. And I want you to express or share, how you were able to go about and create a community and really create the person that's seen as so bold and powerful, and yet is still so human.
Yeah, I think that's just such a powerful thing that's not spoken about, because when people see me and they meet me, they think like I'm superwoman and that I am not human, and that, but there's a work behind the work. And that's why I try to be very transparent on my social media. And I try to share people like the work works. And I always say this, and it's like the work works. You have to do it. There's a discipline behind it. And there are so many benefits. And I never answered your question of how I got into mindset, but when I got into the strength and conditioning space, I realized like it was so much more than the body. It was the preparation for the mind. And as we talked about earlier, when we take care of our body, it's about the mental sharpness that we have. There's the pineal gland in the brain that allows us to connect to higher consciousness, super consciousness. And that's really where people seem like they're supernatural or that they're Superman or Superwoman. They're just connected to that segment of self, which everybody has the potential to be connected to that version. But there is a certain routine and habits that need to be set in place on a day-to-day basis in order to operate at peak performance all the freaking time. And somebody reached out, they're like, how are you always on? And I'm like, there's there's work behind the work every single day. Like, it's simple, but it's not easy, and you have to do it, but it's always worth it. And so yeah, when I was overcoming my addiction, I started getting deeper, and I had hired coaches and mentors to help me like really learn that addiction is just attachment and that it was a coping mechanism. And I just had the wrong tools in place, but it was just a tool to help me, number one, become emotionally available, because I was so shut down and numbed off. And I do see that a lot with entrepreneurs. Like, we close off our hearts. We think it's a weakness. We stop becoming vulnerable because we think it's a weakness, but it's actually a strength. I'm not saying go and be vulnerable all the time, because you got to handle your business and people wouldn't think that seeing me, because I do present a very strong, like, let's get to business type of demeanor and personality trait. But there is so much strength and vulnerability, and it's what makes us human. And in order to have emotional intelligence, which is actually a very strong skill set in business, you have to first have emotional management. And in order to have emotional management, you have to have emotional availability, and you have to be connected to your heart, because your heart is where your truth is. Your brain, your mind is all about programming. So we have to teach our mind to become obedient to our heart, really is what it's about. It's a practice of teaching our mind to become obedient to our heart, because our mind can be programmed every single day. So you have to decide who you're allowing to let into your mind, and you have to protect your mind, and you have to feed your mind, and you have to fuel your mind every single day, at the same time keeping your heart open. And that's really what I consider superpowers. No matter what happens in your life, and no matter what trauma, no matter what chaos, no matter what tears your heart, because I still don't believe our heart breaks. I believe we have tears, and with each tear, there's a repair, and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. I feel like those are the strongest people when the most, traumatic things can happen to you, but you can still keep your heart open.
Wow. I want everybody to go back and re-listen to the last like 3 minutes, because that was so good. Like, I was like scrambling to write notes fast enough, because that was so powerful, especially right there with the last point, teaching your mind to become obedient to your heart. I think that's so powerful. And it's a message that is not heard often enough. And, I would love for you to go into that a little bit more, as well as speak about some of the routines and habits, because that's also, you said it's simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, sometimes people, they hear it and like, they think it's easy. Oh my gosh. Like, no. Simple and easy are two separate things. It can
Totally
be simple,
different.
but it's not easy when we're talking about building discipline. So I'd
Yeah.
love for you to talk a little bit more about the teaching your mind to become obedient to your heart, and then to speak about some of the routine and habits that you found that really allow you to operate at such an optimized level, where it just seems like, oh my gosh, how is she just showing up like this all the time? Like, does it ever turn off? Like, it takes work.
Yeah, I always say like there's gremlin hours. Nothing good comes out of anybody after 10 p.m. So just go to bed. Those are the gremlin hours. I just had a podcast on that yesterday. All right, so let me answer the first one. The first one is teaching the mind to become obedient to the heart. I've been practicing yoga, which actually yoga, they found to be one of the most powerful practices to help people with all forms of addiction. And what I mean by addiction is just an attachment. And you might not be engaged in the behavior of something, but we can be addicted to negative emotions. We could be addicted to gossip. It's not always substance abuse. It's also, thoughts and patterns and stuff like that. And so the most powerful pose in the yoga, and yoga just means a union with your higher self. That's all it means. If you look up the word, it means a union with the highest expression of yourself, your super conscious, your best self, in other words. In lamest terms, it's like your beverage, like my best self. It's higher consciousness. It's super conscious. Like that's really the science name of it. So yeah, your best self. And the most powerful pose in yoga is actually child's pose, where you drop your head below your heart. And the reason why we want to teach and I learned all this in my yoga practice, and I have 2 yoga certifications because I had to understand. I was in a car accident at 32 years old. I'm 38 now. So I was in a really, really bad car accident where I couldn't work for 90 days. And I was out of commission. I had no money. I was just like living off credit cards, really messed up like my credit. And so I was put in a corner, and I do believe this was another segment of like rejection is God's redirection. It was the only way I was going to fully merge into what I'm doing today, like 100%, like online, like go for it. Because there's always fear with something. And when I was in ICU for 3 days, they wanted to do surgery on me. And I was like, no, like that's like the, stubborn side of me. I was like, you're not touching me. I respect me. I was like, don't, like, no. And I was like, okay, I believe like when we're put through extremes, you really do see if the work works. And I was like, I've always been that person. I was like, you know what? I do know certain things. I'm not going full in until like something bad happens to me. And there's a quote that I also learned in yoga. It's like, why wait for bad things to happen in order for us to do something good for ourselves? And it's true. Like, why do we wait for trauma or chaos in order to fully go into like what we know or what we've been wanting to do? Like, do it before. Like, bad things don't have to corner us. So I go all in with my yoga practice, and it was a Raja yoga practice, and it's just more allowing gravity to do the work, and it's heated yoga. And the moment I was able to like go to the ground, like I couldn't even sit in a chair. It took a while, a few weeks for me to be able to like sit down and get back up and stuff like that. The moment I was able to get down, I started going into hot yoga, and I would just literally sometimes just lay there and just be in there. And then I went every single day, and every day I got better by 2%. I'm like, whoa, this is magic. Like, what the heck is going on? Like, this is magical. Like, I'm for it. I need to understand, because a part of me is like, I need to understand because I'm a teacher. I love teaching. I love like, that's what leaders do. Like, let me go first, and I'm going to come back for you guys. So I went first. I went through yoga teacher training. It was like a few $1,000s. It was like 2 months of that specific one. And I learned all the philosophy behind it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is life coaching. Like, this is life. This is amazing. This is cellular CMR, it's called cellular memory releasing, cellular impressions, cellular, like this is more like epigenetics and science, and it made sense. And I feel like even studying with Dr. Joe Dispenza, a lot of it is like science does bridge that gap between the metaphysics and the the groundedness, the practicality of stuff. And it was really cool because science was able to explain everything that I was feeling that I couldn't explain to other people. And so my body just healed. The people that were suing the people because it was a really like ridiculous accident. And they're like, we can't really get you any money because we can't tell them you just went to yoga and healed. And I was like, I'm not going to like go to the doctor just to get money. Like, I'm going to do what's good for me. and it worked. And everybody was so shocked. Like, I can't believe you healed yourself in like less than 2 months with that type of an accident. And it was just so powerful of how the body repaired itself so quickly with another proper tool. So, I don't know how I went down that. Okay. We talked about, what was that question about? Teaching the mind to become obedient to the heart. So I learned a lot about that. The heart is really where the magic is. The heart is where your life path is. The heart is where we really need to learn how to trust that part of ourselves. The side to not be trusted yet until you properly program it is the mind. The mind is all based on programming from a very young age by even all the storylines that I just told you, which I didn't even tell you all of them. We just picked select segments of them, but everybody has multiple storylines, past lives in this lifeline. And we don't need to keep bringing it up unless we're going to relate with each other, because it's time to move forward, right? To create a new storyline, to get into forward movement mindset. But when it comes to the heart is really where your passion, your purpose, your intuition, like you're going to feel something and you're going to be like, yes, but the mind is going to be like, this makes absolutely zero sense. Have you ever been in a situation where the brain is like, this makes no sense, but your heart is like, do it?
1000%.
And did you follow it?
So I've had experiences where I did not follow it, and it was immediately followed by regret. And I've had moments where I followed it and I was so confused at why I was listening to it. And then it worked out, and I made a promise to myself that when my heart and like the internal instinct screams that loud, I'm listening. Even when it whispers now, I'm listening.
The more you listen, the stronger it gets, you guys, by the way. So in the beginning, when you shut it down and shut it up, it's weaker, but it's a muscle. The heart is a muscle. It is one of the most beautiful, strongest muscles in the entire body. Without a heart, we do not exist. And they even did a study where people had to have heart surgery. Did you ever hear that study where people had their heart replaced and they took on the cravings and desires of the person's heart that they had, that had passed, that they received?
Yep. So I remembered here. Actually, it's funny. I remember hearing that like when I was younger, like hearing like stories and studies of that, where they would put the heart in and then people would find almost like there were these memories attached with it.
Yeah. So that's called heart math. There's a movie on it, and there is a whole science behind heart math. And I got into heart math and started really getting to the core of everything. And I was like, wait, the brain, like the mind, is really about like reprogramming. And then I started getting really, really, really into like Dispenza's work, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and studying a lot of like epigenetics and Bruce Lipton. And I was like, because you can, as I kind of touched briefly, is like we can maybe not have a substance abuse use, but the craving could still be there. So I was like, how do I release all of these cravings and these desires and these attachments? And I am no longer a prisoner to myself, because we all crave freedom. And when I really started getting into the core of that type of work, I was like, wow, like that. And I am free. You know, people like, oh, once you're in this, you're always going to have it. Or people that go to centers, because you're always talking about it. And you're always reminded, and you're always in that energy, and it's like it doesn't exist anymore. It's like me trying to go back and try to pretend like I'm a kid and a kindergartner. I'm not in kindergarten anymore. Why do we got to talk about it? Yeah, there might be a few cool memories and stuff like that, but like me trying to talk about high school, like move on, like create the new, build the new, like, you know, that was like a long time ago. That version of me no longer exists.
You know, it's funny. I actually find anytime I'm interviewing people that are extremely successful, anyone that's like extremely happy with themselves and with their life and with their progression, it's almost like pulling teeth to get them to go back to the moments that like suck. And it's not because they don't want to share it. It's simply because they don't live there anymore. They're really forward moving. They live in the present moment, and they're purposefully creating their future. And it's just like, it's so interesting. So it's like, you know, for the sake of the listeners and the sake of the audience, I just like to bring them back there just to show a map, a roadmap of, hey, you too can get here. You know, I get that you might feel like you're at rock bottom right now, but it's an illusion. right?
Yeah.
Like that rock bottom is a launching point for you so that you can go somewhere, wherever you want to go.
Well, I will say if it's a pain point and they've shut it down, they never really dealt with it. And that still takes up energetic space in the body and it
Agreed.
creates disease. So, I mean, you still have to feel, heal, and deal with it. Something I learned with when I had done shadow work to really also release the not live in my shadow, because we have the shadow side of us, we have the dark, we have the light, we all of it exists, but what space are we operating in? What space do we choose to live in, you know? And so when you can't talk about something or you don't want to go there, if it's relevant content and it has a purpose and it still aches your heart, then that just means that they never really dealt with it. And that's not healthy either.
I 100% agree. So let me ask you this, because you've done a lot of the work and you say the work works. I love that, especially how you say, sometimes we do get into these challenging situations almost to make us do the work, because like you said, you realize at some point you don't need to go to the end of the cliff and get everything lost and destroyed before you start rebuilding. You can just start building, right? You
Hmm.
don't need to always rebuild. It could just be built,
Yeah.
right? So what are some of the routines and habits that you have found to be useful that really, I don't want to say anyone should be able to apply if they, are aware of it?
Yeah. Well, I'm in a different season in my life right now, and I wouldn't expect people to go to the extreme of what I've now incorporated. However, I will say where I start off with typically when I work with people is a foundation of a solid morning and night routine. And the reason why to start with the night routine and to start to respect your sleep, there's three core foundational staples, and it's sleep, exercise, food. I'm sorry, I would say four. I'm going to add a fourth. It's sleep, exercise, getting on a food schedule, and also self-dialogue.
Mm.
And, this is so important where we start backwards. So the times where we're really talking about like reprogramming your brain, we are most vulnerable in our subconscious and our programming, which is really 95% of how we operate in our day, not even consciously aware. 5% is conscious awareness. It's crazy. So if we're trying to program and to learn how to get on our own team, the most critical points is an hour before bed and an hour in the morning, and to really respect those times. And also the most healing parts of the day for cellular repair, easing our mind, recharging our body, recharging our mind, recharging everything, is from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And most people don't even go to bed until like 1:32. So we want to really even like have that understanding of like the most critical times for repair is from 10 to 2. And then, that hour before bed is such a sacred time where like get off the electronics, create a solid discipline, start to clean up your home space, because, your home is such a big part of like if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with depression, if you're foggy minded, if you have mental paralysis, if you are creatively blocked, if you're stressed out, if you're overwhelmed, like clean up your home, start there. Start with your external environment, because your external environment is a direct reflection of your internal environment. So I would say like spend like 10-15 minutes like organizing your home, prep out your clothes for the next day. I say like start with the most active to the least active. Do skincare, take a shower. Showers always calm me. So I love taking a shower, even though if I showered in the morning, I still like to kind of like shower at night. And I just imagine like the whole day washing off of me, like
Mm.
any negativity, any challenges, just cleansing me energetically and just washing off. And then I'll journal. I'll do some brain dumping. If I've got a lot in my mind, I'll just kind of journal it out there 10 minutes. And you can time audit it too. If you're like, oh, I don't have time, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. And then I'll do a meditation practice. The meditation really helps you gain more control over your mind. It helps strengthen self-awareness. It helps just strengthen the connection with you tapping into higher consciousness. And it's definitely not easy, but it's always worth it. It also, I would say, like, we have our physical workout, we've got our mental workout, we got our emotional workouts, and we've got our spiritual workouts. And so it is a workout. It is a daily practice. And then I hop in the bed and I go to sleep, or I'll have my clients kind of have like a very simple schedule. Anything that has nothing to do with electronics, unless you're going to use your electronics for some form of like binaural beats or sound wave or sound bowl healing, something to maybe help elevate and calm or regulate the nervous system. And then the night is going to impact the next 24 hours of your day. So how you go to bed is how you're going to wake up, and it's going to determine how you're going to perform. And then that morning time, you want to start with the least active. So I would just say, like, put your hand on your heart, take 5, heart-centered breaths, and just say, thank you, thank you, thank you, regardless of the emotions that get brought up. You could say frustration and still say thank you. Eventually you're going to feel gratitude. Eventually you're going to feel appreciation. I always say, like, I received this breath. And one quote that I really love, and it's helped me get through a lot of struggles, or when I was really struggling or feeling really depressed or having panic attacks in the morning, which was only a year ago. I would just say, like, I received this breath, and that God gave me a new opportunity, and he gave me a second chance, and that's today. And so if you go in that, it's almost like you're waking up with the possibilities versus taking the past into your present. It's like, today, I really don't know what's going to happen. I kind of think I know, but like, today could be that big day where I meet that one person and I finally have my big break, and it's like, it kind of gets you excited. And when you're excited about life again, your energy shifts. So I would say, like, God gave me that second chance, and that second chance is called today. And so before I leave the bed, I just get that there, or I'll put on I always say, like, an intention of whatever I need to hear. I'll put a little Dr. Joe Dispenza, a little Abraham Hicks on, just like a 15-minute thing, regulate my nervous system. Always make your bed, because that first thing is like sets you up for accomplishment. You actually achieve something first thing in the morning. Even if that's the only thing you achieve something. Get up, wash your face, brush your teeth, go work out, move energy, get in the habit of moving your body. And I always like having a nice breakfast. The first thing you eat in the morning impacts your entire nervous system for the rest of the day. So definitely, if you don't have time for food, get a protein shake in there, or just make some, depending on what your food is, but try to make sure it's a fat, a protein, and a healthy carb versus like a bunch of sugar. And then, I just doubled up on my meditation, but you could do like a journaling, you can organize for the day, but just something like that, something where it's pouring into yourself, because, what you do is just an extension. What you do, like your job, your sport, is an extension of you. So the more you pour into yourself and the more that you get you solid, everything else is going to be an extension of that. And it's only going to be 10 times stronger and better. And no matter what happens in your life, you're going to be able to withstand anything.
I absolutely love that. I mean, I think that is some of the best advice, especially because what you said with starting the morning routine the evening before, I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people miss out on the morning routine, or they're not able to
They
stay
fail.
consistent.
Yeah.
It's because of that evening, they don't have it under control. So then the morning times are just, it's just reacting, right?
It's
They're reacting to their
impossible.
morning.
Your night impacts the next 24 hours out of your day. Like every single,
Mhm.
like even 8-figure earner that I've coached, I would always ask them when it would come to testimonial time. I was like, what is that one thing out of all the work we've done? If you could just say like that one game changer, and they'd be like, that night routine. And we really like customize it. But like I said, I've stepped mine up like even a notch. So I'm even like activating all my senses. Like I'm doing the neti pot. I'm taking this one course. I'm always taking a course, but I was like, yeah, I'm not going to take you guys through that, because I would lose everybody. You guys would be gone by now.
I love that though, because you're always working on yourself and you're improving. And like you said, like a leader, you're actually stepping out into that world first, so you can say, let me come back and bring it to you.
Yeah.
And you're bringing it to people that are at high levels, that are ultimately going out and being able to lead more. So you're leading leaders, which is phenomenal. So Tanya, I want to be respectful of your time. And I want to ask you, there's two of my favorite questions I like to ask people near the end of each show, right? The first question is, I'm massively into reading. So this is very selfish. This is how I build out my personal library. Can you name for me at least one, but no more than two books that were total paradigm shifts for you, that you got your hands on, you opened them up, and you've never quite gone back to thinking the same since?
Yeah. Well, one of the books is always a recommended read for all of my students. And the moment I met you when I was on stage at TAB, I recommended it to everybody. The Hidden Messages in Water. It's a very simple book. I even have like my clients get the book and their kids like take it from them. So it's literally that simple. And it just, there's pictures in there, and it just gives you a really simple way of understanding epigenetics, and that we are all made out of like as adults, 70% cells, and we are all connected through water, and how what we speak, what we listen to, the music, the lyrics, what we read, like everything impacts us on a cellular level. And we're either building ourselves up or we're breaking ourselves down every single day. And that even includes, like, Marlon, what you're saying about the environments that we're putting ourselves in. And so the Hidden Messages in Water is always a recommended read. And it's a simple place for everybody to start. Even the kids read it because there's pictures in it and there's some YouTube videos on. And I would say the second book, I mean, there's a few books. This one is for more advanced, like once you really get into the science and the programming and the superconscious and the subconscious. And that is like any of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. Like I was really grateful. My birthday gift to myself last year this year, still January, was I got to go to a 7-day intensive retreat with him and his book, Becoming Supernatural. I'm not going to lie, it's a very heavy read, but he has a lot of stuff also on YouTube. But that book is just a total game changer. And I love metaphysical stuff, but I love the science because science removes the resistance. A lot of people have a lot of resistance and frustration, and they can't completely grasp the metaphysics. And I get it because I was there. But the way that he proves that science bridges that gap, and then it becomes more believable.
I love that. I love both of those book recommendations. And I am a huge fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. In fact, I have like written in one of my journals that I will host a mastermind where I actually have him come out, and he's orchestrating an event. He's taking people through the work at that mastermind right there. So when people arrive, they get that value.
You better hurry up because I think
that.
he's just working with kids pretty soon.
Get out of here. Oh, I got to speed up.
He's doing the like events, but his passion, I feel, is for the generations to come. And I think that's more of his passion project right now is reaching out to the children, to the kids, to the young teens, which I think is just so cool.
So everyone that's listening, I'm sorry, you've just been uninvited to the mastermind. I'm going to go create a mastermind for kids, and I'm going to go work with Dr. Joe. That's awesome. So let me ask you this final question. And this one's one of my favorite questions, which is, Tanya, I want you to imagine that tomorrow you're waking up, and as you're beginning to open your eyes and you're coming to consciousness, you start to realize you have no memories. There's no recollection of your childhood. There's no recollection of your young adulthood. You don't remember any of the work, any of the tools, any of the relationships. You're a total blank slate. Now, you're not freaking out. You're not scared. It's not a Saw movie. There's nothing to be nervous about. However, you start to have a thought come to you. And as this thought comes to you, for whatever reason, there is no resistance from you, right? You just accept it fully. There's 100% faith in it. And this first thought begins the foundation of everything else to come. What would you ideally prefer for this first thought to be?
That's a very loopy question. It's a great question. I feel like I was going through hypnosis for a second. I was like, yeah. I did a hypnosis session last week. So I was like, what's memories here? So meaning like, how would I be running my life? Like, what would how would I be showing up? Like heart centered, or is that what you're
Right. Like,
asking?
so the thought could be anything, like whatever this thought is that comes to you, it's just going to become a part of your belief process. This is
Yeah.
just you accept it fully on faith, and nobody could ever convince you opposite of whatever this thought is that is now planted in your mind.
Yeah. I feel like I'm kind of living like that right now because I've been doing a lot of like mind movie stuff and hypnosis work and, tapping into like that higher segment. And meaning even like getting out of my own way of like writing that book and getting on stages and speaking and serving and strong leadership. So I don't know if that was like answering your question, but every day I feel pulled because I feel like in life either pulls us or pushes us. And to operate from your, like you're talking about, that space of being like moved and pulled, and that's really the inspiration. Did I answer, like, was that the question? I don't know. I'm still a little
Yeah.
uncertain.
So in essence, it sounds like from there, you would continue to live the life that you're living right now, where you're constantly pursuing connection, deeper connection to your highest self, and living with that truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing that I've been understanding was like, if you're going to get addicted to anything, get addicted to your resonance, the way that your energy is. Like get addicted to your energy in a healthy way and riding the wave of energy, regardless of the circumstance. And just because we are all energy, and we have low energy, we have high energy, but it's like finding the middle way, not too high, not too low, but like right in the center, like that wave.
I love that. So Tanya, I want to ask for the people that have been listening that they're just like, oh my gosh, she's awesome. I love her. Like you took them to a space where, they started getting these epiphanies and they're like, wow, like they're resonating with you. 'Cause I know even as I was listening to you, I actually felt like part of my heart that turns on when I connect with people on a deeper level. And I was like, oh, cool. Like this is turning on again, even like through Zoom. This is awesome. So for those people that were resonating with you, I want to know, how can they connect with you? Or if someone's interested in working with you, how could they reach out to work with you? I don't even know if you have any openings for people to work with right now, but like, what's a way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, well, I just had a team meeting, so we're doing this really cool thing. We're having like team tryouts. We have the Mastermind Elite. We host it 3 times a year, and energy is everything. Dynamic is everything. So of course, people need to make sure that we are supporting. I mean, this is for the individual within the self, but when you're working with other people, there still has to be a connection. You have to feel safe. You have to feel like inspired. You have to feel like, if you have one bad seed in there, it's just not going to work. So we have team tryouts and you can reach me, Tanya, Tanya, at TanyaCOliver.com. And I have a freebie. Can I give them the free link? It's a procrastination. I noticed that was like one of the biggest things for entrepreneurs was the struggle of procrastination. And so hold on, the link is, Morgan sent it to me. We have it's TanyaCOliver.com/time. So that's a freebie. We created like a free little, a free podcast on like procrastination and time management and how to stop wasting time to be more efficient. So that's free. So if you guys want something free, just to kind of get a style or a taste of how I coach and how I work with people, that's for you guys. And then of course, Instagram, and we're getting on YouTube, we're getting on TikTok, and that's Tanya C. Oliver.
I love that. So I'm going to make it easy for everyone listening. Go down into the link below, go down to the description below. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, and I'm going to have the URL to everything. And this is what I want you all to do, because Tanya gave her time. She gave her tools. She gave her resources. She gave her energy. I want you to let her know that you appreciated listening to this episode, that you appreciated her taking the time to do the work so that she can uncover it for you. I want you to screenshot this episode right now while you're listening, not later, not next week, not 5 minutes from now, right this moment while I'm cheesing as hard as I can. and tag us on Instagram and let us know what you thought about this episode, and reach out, right? DM myself, DM Tanya. Let us know what stood out to you in this episode. Tanya, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. You are always you're an absolute pleasure to be around. I love seeing you at different masterminds. I always think, like, because I feel connected to you, that I'm like, wait, you're not in Arizona? Why do I feel like you're in Arizona? You're like, no, dude, you keep bumping into me everywhere else we go. But I just want to say I appreciate you and thank you so much for being here
I
today.
appreciate you too. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I feel like it was like 2 minutes and it was like over an hour.
That's the vibe. So everyone, make sure that you go ahead and tag us in those screenshots. I want to see it, and tune in for the next episode. I have no clue who the next guest is going to be, so it'll be as much of a surprise to you as it is to me. I'll see you guys later.
Bye.